Welcome to Recalculating America, a program dedicated to small business in America. Recalculating will help you, the American small business owner, build a new business or help you to grow your existing one. Each week, experts will give you useful information about starting your new business, and you will hear from professionals selected to help you grow your business. Your hosts are Don Mazzella and Dan Perkins. Don Mazzella is the editor-in-chief of the Small Business Digest and has many years of experience helping small businesses build and grow their businesses. Now he is sharing his ideas with you over the air. Dan Perkins is a registered investment advisor with 43 years' experience in managing money. He specializes in helping small business owners make their money work as hard as they do. Now, your host, Don Mazzella and Dan Perkins.
Well, good evening. Dan Perkins here, and I'm your co-host along with Don Mazzella for Recalculating, a program dedicated to helping small business leaders increase their profits. We draw our name from the best-selling book of the same title, which features contributions of more than 100 presidents, experts, and leaders from all over the world in ways to help you grow your small business. Don?
You know, each day we hear about some company having a security breach and facing severe costs from clients and customers who want someone to pay for their loss. Well, we've got somebody today to help small businesses prevent that. Dan, back to you.
Our guest this evening is John Chrisley, and he is the provider of security services for multiple locations. Good evening, John. How are you?
Good evening. Happy to be here. I'm well, thank you.
John, take a moment and tell our listeners about your company and how you got involved with it and some of your background.
Sure, thank you. So I am the information security officer for a company called Netsurion. And last year we also acquired a firm called Event Tracker. And between the two firms, we are a provider of managed cybersecurity solutions for businesses of all sizes, but primarily we focus on the SMB companies that have multiple locations. They have brands and franchisee operations. I got involved with them because I spent many years as an information security officer within large corporations trying to handle compliance and security issues, and it's really good to be on the vendor side of things now so I can help a lot of customers who are trying to go through some of the same things I did for years. And our company primarily focuses on trying to put in the right security to prevent breaches from happening, these data breaches we're going to talk about, and also trying to help people recover from them if they should, unfortunately, experience a data breach.
So, John, how do people get a hold of you? What's your website, and what's the best way to contact you if they have questions?
Sure. So our website address is www.netsurion.com, and Netsurion is spelled Netsurion, Netsurion.com. The best way to reach me is via my email address, which is jchrisley, it's JCHRILY, @netsurion.com. I also maintain a Twitter presence. The handle is @Chrisley. Netsurion maintains a Twitter handle at @Netsurion. And so we're always happy to help and consult and advise businesses of all sizes and help them through their cybersecurity challenges.
So let me drill into what you just said there and ask you the question. So since we're about small business, what does your company do and what kind of services might they have for a small business operator?
Sure. So the core of our business starts with a managed firewall. You know, you've got to protect your network. A lot of times these are retail customers. And when I say retail, I'm not trying to lump them into any other category than they take payments. They take credit cards. They're bound by PCI compliance as a main driver from a compliance factor. So anyone that's taking payments, which is anyone from a hamburger type place to a hotel to a doctor's office, there aren't many small businesses nowadays that don't take credit cards. And these small operators, if you will, they typically have anywhere from 5 to 20 computers. They may have multiple locations, but each location may look somewhat similar. And they have network security challenges just like the big companies. The difference is they may not have anybody on staff or even available to them to help them out with these security challenges. They can be hacked from the inside or the outside just as easy as anybody else. So we start with a managed firewall to protect the network, sort of put the gateway in place to make sure that hackers can't get in. At least we try our best to make sure those hackers can't get in and steal, credit card data or employee data, or in the case of small doctors' offices or dentists or chiropractors, it could be healthcare data. To go along with that, we go further than just the firewall. Now with the acquisition of Event Tracker, we go all the way down to the endpoint computer, being the point-of-sale terminal, where they take the credit card. And that's typically a Windows terminal. So we have solutions that go from the firewall all the way to the endpoint. And we also help them with their compliance efforts. Retailers who are bound by PCI compliance, they have a lot of regulatory items they have to comply with. And it can be very frustrating for the small retailer, the store owner. Maybe he owns 10 stores or 100 stores. Compliance can be very daunting. And so we have solutions and support to help people through that, try to make it as easy as possible to sort of get to the finish line and make sure that you are not only getting compliant and making sure all the right things are in place and you can check the box, but also along the way making sure that they're as secure as possible so that, again, these data breaches either cannot happen, or if they do, they're prepared, we're prepared. They've got somebody watching over their computer network that maybe they didn't have before. And so we hope that gives them a sense of, satisfaction and a sense of security that somebody's got their back and we're watching out for them.
John, I had breakfast with a friend of Don's this morning, and the person, instead of bringing me a paper bill for my credit card, brought over an iPad with one of those little white square things stuck in the side. And it reminded me that every Sunday morning here on Sanibel, we have a farmer's market, and most of the merchants either use the iPad or a phone with the swiper to process credit card transactions. Is that a higher risk maneuver?
Well, there's a couple factors at play in something you said. So let me just break these down one by one. If somebody's using an iPad and it's got, I think the brand name is Square Reader, those are fairly secure compared to some other solutions. But what I'd like to say is that as an industry, the payment industry as a whole is moving away from swipe technology. They're moving to credit cards that have the chip in them. So you may have been to some stores where they require you to insert the card now, and it's reading the chip. And then you'll see other stores where they're not quite ready for that. They may have the box on the counter, but they tell you, nope, you can't put your card in yet with that chip. You still have to swipe. The swipe technology, where the credit card information is located on the back of the card on a track there, that is insecure, and that's what's causing the most issues in retail, is still relying on that technology. So we have customers all over the U.S. and many in Canada. I'm seeing many customers that are moving to the getting rid of the swipe functionality, and they're moving to the chip and PIN kind of technology, which is much more secure. And what happens is when they do that, they move to a mode of payment processing that is fully encrypted end-to-end. There's almost, I say almost because there's always a way, right? But almost no ability now for somebody to sneak in there and steal that credit card number while it's going from the person's hand to the swiper to the credit card processing center, if you will. So I see many people going to the more secure chip-enabled cards, and that's got to continue. And when it does, and I think we're going to see about another year or two before this really gets traction and a lot of people get these, because it is a reinvestment of technology and a hefty one at times. And so as this gets going, and it is required by a lot of brands, they're mandating that, you know, their franchisees go to this technology. So as that gets rolled out, you're going to see that part becomes more secure over time.
John, I've done a lot of international travel, and chip cards have been available in Europe long before they were here in the United States. What was and if you're right that the chip card is a better, more security and more secure, what do you think the reluctance was of and the slowness of adopting the technology in the U.S. if it was in fact more secure?
I think this is just indicative of what you see with, you know, other countries, especially the UK, you know, adopting new methods and new technologies quicker than the U.S. And that's unfortunate. You know, we should lead in those areas, but unfortunately a lot of times we don't. It takes, you know, watching another country do it and do it successfully. It also takes, you know, more breaches and more mandates. I have this saying, it takes a breach. And whether you're talking about healthcare patient data or now we're talking about payment data, it really, unfortunately, in this industry, it takes a breach for somebody to really wake up and pay attention and then realize that the technology has been out there. It has been available for a long time. But again, there's usually a cost to upgrade. And, you know, you got to understand a lot of these retailers probably put in their point-of-sale systems and their card swipe machines maybe only a year or two ago, let's say. And so for now to be told that, you know, you have to go and basically wholesale upgrade your restaurant with new technology, well, that can be daunting, and nobody wants to do it unless they have to do it. And unfortunately, the PCI regulations are not enough to force them to do it. It's usually when there's a big public breach and the boards start taking watch, and then they're told you have to do it, and then mandates are set, and then you see it happen.
John, I have one more question for you, then I'll turn it over to Don. We talked in the pre-show about cybersecurity, and you were talking about Apple and how the difference between Apple and, say, Microsoft is installation. I believe you were implying that Apple does a better install because they do it for you, as opposed to some of the security technology from Microsoft has to be installed on the Microsoft machine. So help our listeners understand the differences and what they should be doing.
Sure, and this is not a knock on Microsoft or a play for Apple on my part, because I like them both, to be quite honest. But I think that in general, and what we were talking about was this, you know, the Apple operating system is inherently more secure sort of right out of the box. You'll notice people that are using iPhones or iPads or you know, Mac desktops, they don't have a lot of the challenges that Windows users have because security is sort of built into the operating system. And I know that if you build an application for the Apple operating system, in order to get it into the App Store, it goes through a lot of checks, and you basically have to almost prove that, you know, it's very secure, and they do checks. Whereas with Microsoft, I'll say it's more of an open operating system. It's not that it can't be secured. And what I was talking about in the pre-show is the biggest problem is you have to have people that understand how to lock it down, how to install it and do it right. And unfortunately, in the SMB community, they may bring in an IT firm or even a point-of-sale installer firm to put in the point-of-sale and the registers and the hardware. But those same people doing the install, they may not be security experts. And typically they're not. And so that can leave a lot of holes in the resulting install. Again, it's, you know, my advice is if you want securely done right, bring in the experts. Let somebody come in that actually knows how to check your system for security and then how to fill in any gaps and make sure that those systems stay secure. It's not that you can't lock a point-of-sale system down so it's very secure. And I won't get into is that as secure as Apple, because that's not a fair fight.
Right.
But Windows systems can definitely be locked down enough and appropriately, but it takes a willingness to do it. You have to want to do it. You have to think about it. You have to usually hire somebody that understands how to do that and do that right.
Well, terrific. Don?
Well, I'm going to follow up, Dan. You were doing a great job. My question is, obviously, you know how to do it, John, but what are the steps that a smaller business should take initially deciding they need somebody for security, and the questions they should ask?
Sure. So, in our business, we sort of come in alongside, if you will, of these point-of-sale installers and systems. We provide security, and not only security, but the management of the security. But it's almost like it has to be layered on, and it's usually, unfortunately, an afterthought that people think, we've had a breach, okay, what do we do now? As opposed to thinking ahead of time, what can we do proactively to protect our customers' data? Because at the end of the day, that's what they're doing. They're not only protecting their brand, but they're protecting the data of the consumers who trust them with their credit card data and their information. One of the things that businesses can do is just make sure they reach out to a firm like Netsurion to ask some questions. I talk to customers all day long, and I have some basic questions. I'll go through some of them here as quickly as I can, but I'll ask them, what are you doing for antivirus? And, when you hear silence after that question, there's a problem. Sometimes the owner of the store knows exactly what they're doing, and other times they have no idea. They put their trust in somebody, some installer, some tech, but they didn't get clarification or an attestation that there's good antivirus and it's being kept up to date. The same thing goes for patching. Patching is one of the biggest issues I see in the SMB community. And when I say patching, if you think about your home computer, well, Windows comes out with updates all the time, and so do Adobe and Java and others. So it's not only about keeping the point-of-sale system up to date, but it's also about keeping the computer up to date. And I mean, this has to be checked almost on a weekly basis. If there's new patches that are released, they're done for a reason. And that means, the manufacturer, and Apple does the same thing. They have updates to their operating systems from time to time. Everybody does this. So I try to get people to understand, why are the manufacturers releasing updates and patches? Because they want to fix things that have been found. They could be little issues, they could be big issues, but you've got to keep up to date on patches. And probably the last thing I'll say in this thread for the moment is remote access remains a huge issue in SMB, especially in retail. A lot of the vendors that install these systems, they need to have remote access for support. And what ends up happening is we could put in all the secure firewalls and all the other controls, and we could have everything locked down properly. And then somebody's going to come along and say, I'd like to punch some holes in that firewall and reduce the amount of security so that we can have remote access to support that customer. Netsurion, as a managed security company, we actually provide a very secure way for vendors to get remote access to a customer's network. But if somebody chooses not to use that, I've seen in my study of breaches over the last year, the majority of the breaches that you'll hear about in the news and ones that we will comment on are primarily traced to somebody left essentially the back door open. They left remote access unsecured. They didn't do it right. It's so easy to fix, but again, you've got to understand it. And so if you're a business owner and you own 1 or 100 stores, one of the first things you ought to be demanding of who takes care of your network and your computers is, what kind of remote access is installed and how is it secured? If they can't answer you, it's time to find a new firm.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a small operation, 3, but at the end, and it's PC based, unlike Dan's Apple based. At the end of the when I shut off, the computer will say, "Stay on while we update from outside." And someone once told me that was the wrong thing to do. Is it smart to update that way, or to do it yourself once a week or once every 2 weeks?
It's an interesting question. I think that, look, the computer, especially if you're running Windows, nowadays, 10, 20 years ago, this is a different story, but nowadays, Windows knows when there's updates. And if your computer is set up to automatically bring down updates when they are available, then when it tells you that it's got updates to install, and please don't turn your computer off until these are installed, that's an important message. And Microsoft is trying to do the right thing there, and they're trying to make sure that these patches get put on. Because if they leave it up to the user or the consumer, the small business owner, traditionally they're going to ignore that. They're going to say, I don't want that right now. And so I think that that's important to allow the operating system to do the updates. If you've got, I think one of the better concepts around patches and things is bring somebody in that can actually put in a system that'll do the patches for you. It can schedule the patches to be installed at an off time for your business so it doesn't interfere. If you turn your computers off, it's hard to update them remotely, but you can work that out with a service provider. They can say, you know what, every Sunday at 3 a.m. we can apply all the patches. Just work something out so that your computers are up to date. And more importantly, and this is where we come in with some of our services, you've got to have somebody checking your network from the outside and from the inside almost monthly to make sure that you're staying secure, that nothing has fallen out of compliance or out of secure.
Back to you, Dan.
We've got about 2 minutes left. I wanted to ask you another question. We have seen over the last several years incidents of huge hacking, Yahoo and Chase Manhattan Bank and Citibank and American Express, and where millions upon millions of files have been compromised. Yet, if you follow it, and I'm a registered investment advisor, and I manage money, and I've been doing it for 43, almost 44 years. I am surprised when you see a breach where they talk about 20 million records have been compromised. There doesn't seem to be a huge backlash from the consumer. It's almost as if hacking of our computers is the new normal. What do you say to that? You got about a minute.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. We've really become numb as a society. We see these, and I can remember, I won't mention the retailer, but a certain big retailer had a huge breach, and my wife said, "That's it, I'm done. I'm not going to shop at that store anymore." And about 2 months later, because she needed something, we were right back there shopping at that same store. It is unfortunate, and I think that's because we are used to it, and there's not enough that you can do as a consumer to get at these companies who have weakened security. I think you're going to see a lot more class actions come out of these, and that's probably good for the industry, even though it's bad for those big corporations. But I think that this is going to make the boards of these companies and the investment companies really stand up and start demanding that these franchisees and these brands put in adequate security and really audit and attest. And that's going to be important for companies like Netsurion to make sure we're right there at the forefront, helping them when they finally decide, okay, it's time to take this seriously.
So, John, one more time, give us your website, and so people can get in touch with you.
Sure, absolutely. So the company website is www.netsurion.com. That's spelled Netsurion.
John, thank you so much for being with us today, and we'll put a link to your website on our website tonight after the show's over, and we'll look forward to having you on again. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And now a word from our sponsor.
Dan Perkins here with your Recalculating Small Business Tip of the Day. How important is paint to a painter? Current estimates are that America has 450,000 house painters, and almost all of them are small businesses. The cost of paint is going up, so paint is a large expense for the painting contractor. The cost of the paint can be as much as 15% of the price of the job. Skimping on the paint may cost you in the long run. Using a lower quality paint may make your price more competitive, but the client may not like the results a year or two down the road, and that could cost you more than you think. Like many things, you can buy lower quality paint that doesn't hold up, but the lower price could cost you a referral and could damage your reputation. So if you're a house painter, think about spending a little more on the paint you buy. You will grow your business, your reputation, and spread joy all around the house. Check out recalculating.biz for more useful small business suggestions. This has been Dan Perkins with your Small Business Tip of the Day.
Well, welcome back. Our guest now is Daniel. Is it Alarik? Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Close. It's Alarik.
Alarik. I'm sorry, Daniel.
No worries.
He's the owner of Grunt Style, and it's www.gruntstyle.com. He's a veteran, and thank you for your service, as I'm a veteran. And you own and operate a clothing company in Chicago that specializes in patriotic and military lifestyle apparel. Tell us how you got into the business of Grunt Style.
Well, it's a fun story. I was a drill sergeant down at Fort Benning, and my wife stayed here in Chicago when I was down there training troops. And she told me it's probably time to think about coming home and see your family. So, at that time I already had 11 or 12 years in. So I did some paperwork, got back to the reserves, and then I wanted a way to kind of keep that connection to the culture, pride and patriotism. So thought the best way to share that culture with everybody is put it on your back. So I made a few T-shirts, threw it in my car, and drove around the country selling it. I did that about 7 years ago is when we started. Now we're, 7 years later, we got about 210 employees. Over half of them are vets. We design, make, print, ship everything ourselves.
So is it all manufactured in Chicago?
Yeah, we do all the screen printing in there. We do some stitch work there as well. Yeah, right outside the city.
So how far is your distribution?
How far is it? Well, it's about probably 300 feet from my office.
Maybe I'll ask it a different way. Where can we find your stuff? Only online, or are you in any retail outlets?
Now we're in about 220 or 250 stores right now. We got a couple bigger stores like Cabela's and obviously AC's, of course, and some other ones as well. But predominantly we sell everything online. That's our biggest avenue.
And what's most popular with what you got?
We are all over the place. Historically it was, a lot of our street apparel, which is, T-shirts, hats, hoodies, etc. But then we started getting to other parts. So we do a lot of fitness gear. We got outdoor gear. We sponsor a lot of shooting teams. We're now in NASCAR as well. We have our own truck, which is a lot of fun. So we're all over the place.
So your company's been in business 7 years.
7 years.
And you now, what did you say, you have 250 employees?
About 210 was the last count I got on Monday. I'll have another report next week. We're always hiring.
You're always hiring. Do you have a lot of turnover, or is it fairly stable?
It's pretty stable. Obviously, when you go through rapid growth stages, you're going to have people coming in and out. But, even when I sit down, so I sit down with our new employee orientation once a month. We bring all the people who are just hired, and we sit with them. And I tell them, I said, listen, this might be a chapter in your life, and you're going to school, and you're going through the next chapter. That's okay, but you're going to work your ass off while you're here. And so we have a whole collection of that. What's great, though, is most of our salaried employees, guys that are, kind of got nice leadership jobs or, director positions or management positions, started from, the ground up. They started, by folding shirts. Even my chief operations officer he came in as a shirt folder. Our marketing director, his previous job, he was selling food out of a truck, which is, all good stuff. But we always like to hire within, or we prefer to hire within, and we have plenty of opportunity because of how fast we grow.
So with that kind of growth, what's been your biggest challenge?
So the biggest challenge is always ourselves. And for that, it could be a collection of things. So there's, one could be, a lot of us don't have the experiences. We're continuing to grow. So it's always how hard we can work and how fast we can educate ourselves. And it's by, talking to other people who have been successful to, just grinding it out, reading every book you can get and just working a lot of hours, working hard. The other one is we're a bootstrap company. I started the company for $1,200. I just didn't have any more money. So we always, to fuel our growth, we're always using last month's profits to pay for next month's infrastructure.
So talk about where you get your raw merchandise.
All over the place. Sometimes we'll talk to textile mills. Sometimes we'll work with distributors. Most of our stuff is usually American fabric. That's very important to us. Sometimes it's, particular pieces. It's just impossible to get in the States. There's only 2 textile mills in the U.S. anyway. But we try to keep everything in the U.S. We have some stuff that comes from various locations. We care about quality first, but we understand that we're proud of America just like everyone else, so we try to do everything in the U.S., which is why, we screen print everything ourselves. We do a lot of our own stitch work. We're actually going to be one of the largest, if not the largest, PVC patch manufacturers in the next 30 days. In the United States, which is where we're really excited about. And we're even already started to build our own cut and sew facility to manufacture jeans and pants right here in the USA.
So you'll be buying the denim and cutting it and then creating and sewing them yourselves.
You got it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, so something that we really, really excel at, and it's not because we've been blessed from the heavens or anything like that, but most of our team comes from a military background. So working at a very disciplined cadence and high tempo operations allows us to be very, very efficient. And we're able to compete with a lot of the overseas manufacturing, not on labor costs, but by being efficient, allows us to compete on the pricing. We may not be able to match it, but we can get pretty darn close, and we can turn it around faster because we're right here.
So you're in overall price and service and delivery, you believe you're competing with the Chinese manufacturers?
On a lot of products, absolutely. Screen printing wise, hands down, yes. I know that a lot of the screen printed stuff you see over at Macy's, our quality is not only better, but we can do it faster and at the same price, if not less expensive than them, just because of our location. There's no ship times, and our guys are extremely fast and accurate.
So, are you talking to Macy's?
Not yet. They're not that important right now. We're focusing on what we do best, which is online. But we're always talking to a bunch of other stores right now, Dick's, Bass Pro, but a few others, PGA, Superstores, etc.
What percentage of your business comes from online?
About 85.
Really? That's amazing. Mm-hmm. And
That's great.
You're growing at what kind of rate, did you say?
This year, we're trending to do at about triple, if not quadruple, what we did last year. So we think we have a chance to break 9 figures.
Wow. So when you look at your business and you look at the predominance of your employees come from military background, most of the jobs in the military, at least I was a radio operator in infantry, didn't train me to do much of a job in the private sector. You talked about trying to train up quickly. What are some of the procedural or business challenges that have taken a lot of your time to learn and try and understand?
Sure, and this we figured out that it matters on where your business is. So if you're a small mom and pop shop, right, where it's you and maybe a very, very small team.
Daniel,
yes.
I'm interrupting you because you're echoing. I'm trying to figure out why you're echoing.
I don't hear an echo on my side.
Okay.
Is your Skype on? Did you inadvertently turn your Skype on?
My Skype's off. I've checked it. Okay.
So I'm sorry, Daniel. Can you go back and start over that piece so we can edit it around?
Absolutely. So how to train the force or the team all depends on where your company is. So if you're a small mom and pop shop, you're basically like a team leader. And as a team leader, you directly control and dictate to everybody on your team. It's a spoken wheel type system. So you don't really need that much training because you can look over everyone's shoulder and make easy corrections. Everything that you need to do comes out of your brain to your mouth, and you directly impact it. And you can do that until you're about a squad type size, and you would get to, maybe 15 people or so, you know, as a large squad. But as soon as you cross over into a small business, now you have different layers of management, and you might have, you know, 2 managers between you and the lowest person on the team as a rank structure. Now you can't directly impact them on a day-to-day basis. That's when you really, really have to focus on setting up a training system. And then for us, we crossed over into being a mid-sized business last year. It's even more complicated. We have the same structure as a line unit, you know. So we have platoons. We have 2 companies with each have their own platoons, squad leaders, team members, etc. And we already started implementing a training program, and it starts with orientation. Everyone comes in and has the same week-long, not just orientation, but, you know, they come in, they do their normal classes, sexual harassment, all the fun stuff, and then we do the culture, etc. Introduce people to different parts of the company, and then depending on where you go, you kind of go to your advanced individual training, your AAT. So if you're a screen printer, none of our screen printers, who are the best in the Midwest, we do over 1 million impressions every month, just with screen printing. They have, none of them have any experience screen printing, so we put them through a class. We have our own trainer for that, and we teach them about the fundamentals, why screen printing works, how to do it, our equipment, etc. And then now, by the end of this year, we're going to have kind of like our PLDC or NCOES classes already set up for new team leaders, squad leaders, etc. Where then we go from, hey, now you're a technical expert, let me show you how to be a successful leader. Because up to, you know, just a few months ago, to make someone a leader is, hey, you do a good job. I'm going to promote you, and I'll try to mentor you when I can, and then we'll just meet regularly. Well, that only works so far, so we're implementing a structured, like an NCO school type training structure. We take them off site for a week or 2, and we teach them the fundamentals of being a leader, how to write counselings, what's some of the legalities, how to, run P&L statements, how to be a leader as a business person. So it's different than being in the military, is how to be a leader in a war-like situation or in battle, to how to be a leader in business. But fundamentally, it's the same thing. But the amount we invest into our leaders will make us more successful.
Right. So your approach is under military structure and military discipline.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How do you pay your people?
We pay them every 2 weeks, money, U.S. dollars. Some are wage, some are salary. It's our goal by the end of this year is I don't want anyone in my building under $15 an hour, whether you're walking in the door or not. We're not quite there yet. I'm waiting on hitting a few efficiencies. So we have, there's still people there, but we're working as fast as we can to get it there. We actually have an E-grade structure in our company, and it's so hey, if you're going to be a team leader, here's your pay range. Now, it's not like the Army. Hey, every E5 gets paid exactly the same. For us, it's just a range. So E5s who are team leaders are getting paid from this. They can get paid from here to here, and depending on their position or experience, education, or et cetera, they'll fall somewhere within that range. But we also do a monthly profit share. Every month we have a certain number of goals. If the entire company hits these goals, everybody gets a profit share.
Great idea. So,
the whole reason behind that profit share was, if we're all busting our butts to accomplish a mission, accomplish a goal, making this place better, why, let's all celebrate together. Everyone should have an opportunity, whether you're folding shirts or you're shipping items or you're a director. Everyone should have an opportunity to make themselves and their families a little bit wealthier or better off.
And how is the profit share decided?
It goes by E-grades. So what we do, it's a fairly simple formula, a little difficult explaining on the radio, but basically it's an E-grade. There's a point pool. So if you're an E1, you get 1 point. If you're an E4, you get 4 points. So you basically get 4 times the amount of an E1. So if you've been there a little bit longer in a different position, your profit share is going to be a little bit lower. The last profit share we did, I think the entire company split $144,000, I want to say, in 1 month.
Terrific.
Wow.
Don?
Can you hear me? My question is, they say that you cannot compete with the Asian countries in terms of creating clothing, yet you seem to be able to do it. What makes you? What is making you able to compete? If I'm hearing you correctly, you're selling your garments at a profit, but sewing them here in the United States, which is supposedly a no-no. How do you do it?
So it's play to your strengths. There is plenty of garments and textiles that we cannot make in the USA yet, just because we don't have the technology or the operations or even the fabric or the machinery to get it done. So I'm not going to try to compete on that level by making those in the U.S. and just and doing that. There's other things that I can do that I can definitely compete on, and then we're going to chase that. So play to your strengths. And then I have to outsource some of our weaknesses. So, for instance, like take the PVC patch manufacturing. It's all done overseas in China. So what we did is the same thing that China's been doing to us for decades. We went over there, we bought their equipment, shipping it back here, and we're implementing our processes and procedures, and now we're going to make it at virtually the same cost, but with a faster delivery time, because now you don't have to air freight it or ocean freight it and wait 45 days to get it here. Same cost, or nearly the same cost, and we're just faster. Speed is where the money is. And if it's in the U.S., we can absolutely double down on speed.
How did you get this expertise? You're sounding like one of the smartest textile people I've run across in many years. How did you learn this, or was it trial and error?
Well, first, compliments go to our team. We have hands down the best team, but then we all think in similar ways. We're mission focused, and we bust our butts. We read everything we can get our hands on, talk to everyone we can talk to, and we try to win. We like winning, but getting to that point is basically making every mistake in the book and then learning from it as fast as possible.
Dan, I'll leave it back up to you. You're asking better questions.
Hold on a second. I don't know that I'm asking better questions. So do you have many women who work in the shop?
Oh, absolutely. I don't have the percentages. It's probably close to 35%, maybe a little bit higher.
And will the women also have military experience?
Absolutely. I mean, again, it's a pretty general pool. Every veteran who walks in with a good DD-214 discharge paperwork is guaranteed an interview. At the end of the day, I have to hire the best person for the job to protect everyone else on the team already. I'm not just going to hire you just because you have a piece of paperwork. But I promise you, we're going to try it. We're going to try. So if it's maybe you could have to start with an entry-level position, or maybe you're more qualified because you have a lot of leadership experience, that you should be one of our leaders. If you were in the military, you have assets that, a lot of civilian organizations are going to miss. But since we're very military-centric or cultured, we can identify those pretty quickly. Like our HR department, they're one of them was an infantryman, but the other one was he was an officer in an S1 shop. Now he's an HR degree, but he has that background as well.
How do you deal? Do you have any challenges with assimilation of non-military people that you're hiring into different jobs who don't have not any experience to the military culture? Do they have a problem fitting in?
I'm sure some of them have, and I'm sure some of them don't last because of that. It's hard work. We work hard, and it's not to say civilians don't, but when you have that added stress in a little bit more military cultured environment, it could be very foreign to you. So where a lot of vets go into a normal organization and feel out of place, you could probably be a civilian and walk in here and feel a little bit out of place. But I can tell you, the guys that do well love it.
So,
Daniel,
go ahead.
No, Daniel, your website again, where you're located physically?
We're located in Carroll Stream, Illinois. It's about 15 minutes from O'Hare Airport. And our website is www.gruntstyle.com.
Daniel, I'm fascinated with your business model. Do you have trouble finding vets now?
Not as much as we used to, because now we have we have a much larger fan base. It's easy. We use leverage social media a lot to push out new job openings, and we have people that come from out of all over the country just to take an entry level position, get their foot in the door, and a lot of times they end up being very successful. So now the recruiting is a lot easier than it used to be. But used to be I used to throw something on Craigslist and then just interview a lot of people.
So so how is your company structured? Is it a limited liability company? Is it a C Corp, S Corp? What's your structure?
It's a limited liability company.
Okay. And how is your management structured? You have yourself. What's your position or title?
I'm a CEO.
Okay. And so do you have how broad is your management team around you?
Well, so similarly, so I have my direct reports is my command staff, basically. So I have my chief marketing officer, my chief operations officer, and then my chief financial officer. Those are my 3 direct reports. Everyone else works with them.
Daniel, we're getting short on time, but what would be the 2 things you would tell our audience you've learned to tell other small business leaders if you were asked, which I'm asking you?
You're going to make a lot of mistakes, and that's okay. Identify them quickly and keep moving. The guys who do well in business are guys who are tenacious. That means that you're going to take a lot of hits, but you got to keep getting back up, and you can't keep doing the same thing. You have to learn and evolve from it. Don't expect a revolution in business. It's not going to happen. Just expect to keep evolving and improving. It's like working out a muscle. Every day you go to the gym, it's going to be sore, you're going to get hurt, but you're doing that because you're making micro tears in your muscle fibers. You're making yourself stronger.
Daniel, do you go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to make a joke, but go ahead, Dan.
That's okay. In looking at your structure, you've been in business 7 years. Was there ever a point in time in that 7-year period where you said, I thought this was going to be a great idea, but it really sucks. It's not going to happen.
Absolutely. About 3.5 years ago, almost 4 years ago, actually. It was, so the first 3 years, I was sleeping in my car traveling around the country, and I just didn't know what I was doing. Literally, I Googled what is business. I had no idea what I was doing. Reading about $4 or $5 a month and just trying to make it work. And then at one point, well, several points, we thought about shutting down, and which by we, I mean my wife telling me, hey, it's not working.
Get a real job.
We had there was our first trade show we were ever going to do. It was in Las Vegas. So I asked my wife to come with me, and I said, hey, if we can make this trade show work, let's keep the doors open. And she's like, okay, I agree. So we ran the numbers. She's like, okay, if we do $6,000 at this trade show, which is peanuts now, it doesn't. But back then, that's huge for us. So we agreed. That was the number. So we scraped the last few dollars we had together, took a flight out to Las Vegas. We took the free shuttle to the airport, walked about a mile and a half to the nearest grocery store, and bought a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter, and that's all we ate for the next 2.5 days. We had one Groupon ticket, so we got a hamburger at one point, but that was it. And we just hustled the entire show. And at the end of the show, we jumped back on the airplane. My wife passed out because she's exhausted, and I'm tallying up all the receipts. And the goal was $6,000 to prove that we could stay in business. And we made a very disappointing $6,200. I was depressed about staying in business. So I pulled out a yellow legal pad, drew a line down the middle, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to write down everyone who's better at me than I am at business, and I'm going to write down what they're doing that I'm not. And it just, at that point is when I realized, and I kind of knew this from other things in life, but it's the same thing in business. There is always somebody better than you. Learn from the people who are already doing it better and do what they do. You're not copying them. You're learning from them. If you're running a race or if you want to run a marathon, I'm not gonna go to the guy who does it in 8 hours. I'm gonna go to the guy who's doing it in 4 hours or 3 hours. The guy who's better than me, so I can say, okay, what are you doing? Because I'm not doing it. Show me how you got your results.
Is your wife still involved in the business?
Yes, my wife's the CFO.
She is CFO. So You're in a partnership. She controls the money.
She definitely does.
Yeah, I understand. All right, sir. Don, anything else?
I think this is we're getting very close to the end, Dan. I think this is a true American success story, but we're going to have to cut it off in the interest of time. Daniel, thank you so much for being with us.
Gentlemen, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. You guys have been fantastic.
Thank you. I'm going to go to your website and take a look at it. Thanks for being with us. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay.
Don't let hackers get your data. Email is insecure and can't handle large files. Instead, use Biscom's Secure File Transfer product. Military-grade security that's as easy to use as email, and it can handle attachments of any size. Visit Biscom.com for your free trial and make sure your private communications stay private. That's BISCOM.com.
Well, the big news, a lot of news this week in Washington, but the one that probably is most important to our listeners is the Trump tax proposal, such as it was. I think it's important that some things that were put in this that a lot of people are not talking about, at least not yet. They're talking about reducing the top corporate tax rate from 35 to 15, and they're talking about a repatriation, but they're not talking yet about the specific tax rate for that money to be brought back into the United States. So that has to be determined. Some people think it ought to be 10%. Whether it'll happen or not, I don't know. I think there will be a repatriation portion. Tax rate, don't know. But even if it was 15, it's still better than 35. The other thing that was interesting in the proposed bill was the tax treatment of Subchapter S, LLC, or actually LLCs and limited partnerships. These are, and Subchapter S corporations. These are what are called pass-through entities. And for our listeners who don't understand what that is, especially if you're thinking about starting a new business, a C corporation is a freestanding entity, and it pays taxes based on the earnings that it makes and then distributes the earnings net of taxes to the shareholders or participants in the corporation. Having that reduced from 35 to 15 will mean that the corporations will have obviously more income, which means that the public companies will probably increase the size of their dividends to their shareholders, and they'll have money to put to work to expand their businesses and hire more employees. The other part of the bill is what happens to the Subchapter S, the limited liability companies, and the partnerships, which are pass-throughs. Pass-throughs mean that the income is not taxed at the institution level. It passes through to the corporate level, from the corporate level to the individual investor, taxed at their particular tax rate. Now, what I read earlier in the week is that they want a provision, and if it happens, it would be phenomenal, Don, that any money passed through to an individual in a pass-through organization would be taxed at a maximum of 15%. That could be a huge boon for small business and a rationale for why somebody might want to set up an LLC or a limited partnership or Subchapter S corporation. Because right now, as you and I know, as small business people, we have LLCs and the income is taxed at ordinary income rates, which could be in the low 30s for somebody like myself and probably you. So a reduction from 32 to 15 could be obviously is going to put more money in our pocket, which is going to allow us to have more money to spend either on our business or on ourselves or put it in savings. So I think that's a very important part of this tax bill that's not getting much play. Whether it'll happen, we'll have to wait and see. But I think it's a great idea, and what a great tax break for the vast majority of businesses in this country, which are small businesses, and the largest single component is 1 to 3 small businesses. A 15% tax rate could be phenomenal. So that's where we are at the moment, and that's my allotted time.
Well, I'm gonna interrupt you, Dan, and ask you a question. According to the Star Ledger here in New Jersey, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut are really net losers in this new tax format, because they're heavy tax states, and there is a provision in this proposal that says, in effect, that you will not be able to deduct your state and local taxes. You wanted to discuss that at all, Dan? Because you moved to Florida.
Yes, I eliminated all of my state income tax. I don't I don't necessarily agree with that interpretation. It could be right, but again, as I said, there's a lot of unknowns. I mean, you could say the same thing about Massachusetts and California, very high tax states. The fact that you won't be able to deduct the state taxes doesn't mean, in my opinion, that the state is going to lower the taxes. The taxes are going to be there. It's just the burden of that tax, because it would not be deductible on against your federal income, would be such that it would be more of a burden on the taxpayer. Now, if I didn't see the article, but if they're implying that more people are going to move to Florida, I don't want any more people here in Florida, so send them someplace else. But the idea that you can't deduct your taxes, the only thing that I see would be forced people to reconsider where they're living, and that might affect cash flow. But deductibility isn't going to do anything in terms of the states reducing their tax rates.
Well, I'm actually now thinking, Dan, of moving to Florida, because if this tax rate goes through, New Jersey, I was talking to a producer at NPR yesterday. He's doing a special on why basic research, which New Jersey was in the forefront in the early part of the 20th century, has declined. And after talking with him, I almost decided to move to Florida because of the various burdens. But states like Florida, which encourage new companies, new startups, are certainly going to benefit from President Trump's bill if it passes. What do you think the chances are of it passing?
I think there's going to be a lot of lobbying on both sides, but I think that we know, for example, we have evidence when Ronald Reagan took over as president, the maximum tax rate was around 70%, and the tax revenue for the government in that first year was about $500 billion. By the time Ronald Reagan finished his second term, the maximum tax rate was like 28%, and the federal tax revenue was over $1 trillion. So the idea that reducing taxes does, in fact, produce more tax revenue has been proven under Ronald Reagan and even under Kennedy. So I think that there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be concerned about what deductions are going to be given up and all those things. But by and large, if I can reduce the corporate tax rate to 15%, and especially if I can pass that through to businesses like me and you, 15%. I mean, Don, if you move to Florida, you've got your state income tax, you've got your federal income tax in New Jersey. You might even have a local city income tax. If you just think about it, if your whole tax rate went down to 15%, the economics of moving to Florida become a no-brainer.
Well, I'm thinking about it, and it's warmer.
Thank you for joining us on Recalculating. We hope the information you received on today's show was helpful to you in starting and growing your business. Please go to our website, recalculating.biz, for past shows and special offers. And until next time, remember, if you grow, we grow. Join us next week for more helpful ideas to make your business a great success.